The world is conspiring against you. Your obligations take on physical weight. The sum confluence of history impresses itself on every moment. There's no escape from choice, no relief from agency. Even when bound by duty or locked in chains, the mass of doubt and regret shapes your being. It eats you up inside, churning your soul into the immolating light, despite casting a long shadow across your emotional Sahara. The push and pull of conflicting value systems makes a puppet out of your personal humanity. Feeling like a rag doll attached to invisible strings, every chance stimuli is oppressive. All you may do is play out the motions in recurring, self-acting gestures. Safety is an illusion in this pandemonium of power plays. Every moment of experience bends around pluralized perspective. The distinction between a proposition and its negation is muddied when informational asymmetry pollutes the atmosphere. That which you do not know shapes your fate, making every breath desperate and laborious. To stumble on your uneven steps now would cost the world, but the world is only a structure for infinite demands. The Witcher 2 makes its identity immediately clear. Everything about the original game, strong central concepts, captivating lore inspired by Eastern European myth, and macho texto dialogue prose, is preserved in a new, highly cinematic form. What was once a beloved festivity of prose and jank is played straight, as thoroughly good in every sense. The first passing minutes with the inquisitive Vernon Roach communicates a spirit that has yet to be snuffed out, or even challenged. We are entering the realm of high production values, yet not sacrificing an ounce of substance for it. The Witcher 2 dares the industry to create its peer, but nobody has stepped foot to occupy the space. We are thrown into a schizophrenic dance with Stockholm Syndrome. Roach is an apex cop, Temerian Special Forces, interrogating Geralt for his suspected role in the murder of Foltest, the manic and unconventional king he saved just 1 month past. We get an interesting taste of non-linearity in this sequence. Many background plots are brewing in the shadows, having yet to reveal themselves. For this reason, we can alter the investigative sequence of events. For every key moment leading to Foltest's murder and Geralt's imprisonment, through dialogue we can relive these prologue levels in disjointed order. This will come to define the game as a whole, an interestingly radical approach to non-linearity that rarely goes repeated. Despite forming a cohesive whole and aligning to a central narrative, The Witcher 2 wears its not-yet AAA character proudly. This is a CD Projekt Red far more willing to experiment with structure, to alienate an audience that has yet to crystallize into comic book fans hungry for slop. Foltest himself shines in all his radiant glory. His high-energy personality disguises a perceptiveness only Geralt is allowed to see, which makes for a truly memorable character whom we are sad to see pierce the veil of life. Treading the same path is Sheilard Fist Osterwend, a suspicious Nilfgaardian emissary, making a dramatic show of his presence, letting cold whispers and rumor degrade the reputation of northern kings. How Foltest deals with the imperialistic Black Ones cements his personality. In the same act as fighting a meaningless war spawned over his royal bastards, Foltest has a feigned penchant for incest, he manages courtesy and diplomacy with a rebellious streak. As a king who remembers the name of every soldier coming across his path, his capacity to instill loyalty is undeniable.
Finally! Traitors of the realm boil tar on the walls while you dally with the royal advisor.
How may I assist you, sire?
We mount an assault today, and you'll be at my side. Follow me, gentlemen. Let's not keep the traitors waiting.
Sire, you said we were out of range.
That was a ballista, Excellency. Its arms strengthened with bronze plates and strung with horsehair. It can propel heavy bolts up to a mile away. A deadly and very costly weapon. An experienced crew can cock and release 2 bolts each minute. Yet it has one flaw.
Your Grace, please take cover.
The recoil of the arms is so strong upon firing that the weapon shifts. It simply cannot hit the same spot twice.
I had no idea Your Grace was a learned military engineer.
I'm not. I gave the Baroness those ballistae 2 years ago for her birthday.
Sire.
What say you, Excellency, of men who live in spite of such wounds?
And what say you, Your Grace, of soldiers who inflict them?
Those who did this live no more.
Master Geralt, I wish to converse with you once the storm of battle has subsided.
Forgive me, Excellency, but I plan to leave the royal court as soon as possible.
Might I know why?
Too often they take me for someone I'm not.
What do they call you, soldier? Wait. You served with me at Brenneran during our foray into the Pontar Valley. Norman Sador. Still an arbalist?
Yes, sir. Fate has not been kind to me.
Ha! Norman Sador, for your years of faithful service to the crown, I appoint you Decurion of the Arbalists. Onwards, gentlemen. No reason to dawdle.
Likeable evil is a persistent theme within this title. Whether a character be some murderer, rapist, or king, not at all mutually exclusive traits, there's no denying their personhood. They take over the scene at a moment's whim, giving due attention to each breath drawn by these desperate malcontents. You see, Geralt has become a pet witcher, strung around to play bodyguard and soldier boy, having saved Foltest from an untimely death in the first game. We get the first taste of a defining emotional theme reverberating throughout the game, how expectations grow around us like a cage. Trapped in the chokehold of 1001 social roles and burdens, Geralt, true to his book depictions, feels like the eternal stranger, an all too useful outsider, an indispensable tool that, despite this property, is at perpetual risk of being pressured to the point of fracture. As we awkwardly and gloriously stride through the battle lines, the 10,000 things converge into one. The Lavalettes are in rebellion against the Matic King for his well-known incest and for scorning a recent marriage to the family. Every strike that pierces their defenses laid new foundations of tyranny. Geralt has no choice but to accept his role as its chief weapon.
Hear that, men! The king sends a witcher, and we are to surrender, forgetting the very nature of honor and pride. We must choose shame or a witcher's sword. Is that how you would live? Will you bow your heads before Foltest?
Never!
You heard them, Witcher.
The Witcher 2 once suffered an onslaught of so-called critiques for its storytelling. The sum total complaint revolves around its complexity and aforementioned non-linear design. As we like to say in the contemporary era, that is evidence of a skill issue.
It's your own fault, Geralt. Your fate is in your hands.
Compared to Marvel-coded blunders that define The Witcher 3's main campaign, redeemed through its side quests and genuinely excellent expansion packs, The Witcher 2, much like Geralt himself, feels like a stranger surviving hostile lands. Although it followed the HBOification of film and media, the autistic eloquence of the first game is superseded by a more naturalistic and cynical style, it doesn't entirely placate that audience. At the time, its design choices were seen as punishing or unfair. Much was made by the journalistic and M1 spamming class about its difficulty. It appeals to that rare creature who can appreciate a walking simulator and an arena FPS for their equal merits. Such a palette defined official CRPG taste for a long time, those who wanted challenge and not merely comfort when playing a video game. For such refined ears, phrases like power fantasies are meaningless. There is no power fantasy, no escapism, only the artful replication of a harsh reality. We want to be immersed into what Order is through its ideal representation, seeking redemption and strength through bitter challenge, dressed up in the mask of tragedy. Each prologue subchapter is a curved line describing a perfect circle to our first act. Having convinced Vernon Roach of the Blue Stripes that the real killer is still free, and getting a fresh cinematic take on the dirty deed, we head off to Flotsam. We cut to a dead time animation eloquently narrated by Dandelion. This variety in presentation is a definite highlight for the Witcher series. Although CD Projekt Red went all out on its real-time cutscenes, we still see a faint reminiscence of the first game's daringness. The early 2010s marks the last era when you could truly feel the free-for-all, the sense that no industry rules are really in place. Flotsam is a deceptive package containing many story threads at once, asking us to pull on them in these early moments. The luscious forest scenery gives way to tortured malcontents like Yorvith. A moving silhouette for hatred and bitterness, Yorvith starkly impresses himself on these beginning moments of the first act.
Sheathe your sword, elf. I'm here to talk. Bow low. You stand before a head crowned. That of Demavend, king of Aedirn, by the grace of the gods, sovereign of the Pontar Valley, and so on.
And you are?
A friend to non-humans. I have an offer.
Speak quickly and to the point. The Arrakis will soon return, and I'd rather know all before then.
I can add several more heads to this one. Each crowned.
Go on.
Full test to start with. I barely escaped in Aedirn. I'll need help. Access to your hideouts and maps of your secret trails. And the support of the Scoia'tael. I want no gold and have no interest in a killer's fame.
Then why do you wish them dead?
It's a long story. Your beast nabbed his necker. Time to go. Do we have a deal, elf?
Having camped out with Letho, the Witcher who slayed first Demavend and now Foltest, his claim to fame is actually quite pathetic. Lashing out with blind vengeance, he helped murder Foltest only because he could, as a trivial message that no Duan is safe. Geralt will hear other words all too familiar with his verbal volley against Filavandrel in The Edge of the World.
Seems like you spout the same old elven drivel.
What do you mean, Witcher?
I've seen your kind before. Proud and shay, sneaking around forests, helpless, yet masking that with acts of increasing cruelty.
I helped kill Roach's king. You call that helpless? Or would you call me a terrorist? No one will grant us our freedom, Witcher. We must win it for ourselves.
You're just another old elf in a young elf skin, using clever words to mask an obvious truth.
Obvious, you say?
This is not about race or freedom, or even vengeance. You're here because someone powerful told you to be. Someone who's using you. They may wear a crown, carry a magic wand, or even lead a guild. But be sure of this. It's not about your freedom, your rights, or your ears. Nilfgaard plowed you once. Now someone new does. Am I wrong?
Those times are gone. No one will ever use the Scoia'tael again.
Who are you addressing? Me? Yourself? Or the archers in those shrubs?
Triss, now!
The liberal case is thus manifest. It is spoken through tacit conclusions resulting from tense dialogue between characters and the overall story threads played out. Yorveth is playing a negative-sum game in which the end result is suffering and death, for the Sword of Destiny is relentlessly cruel. Since he is bound to his hatred and mild attachments to revenkism, he cannot see the long-term balance of justice, the hypocrisy of his elven ancestors, or the difficulty that modern beings face when adjusting to these ancient complaints. No character better represents this tension than Cecil, a studied and educated dwarf who acts as a reformist and advocate for the non-humans living in Flotsam. He and Yorveth have at best agreed to disagree, sharing harsh words and threats when moods are bitter.
The non-humans in Flotsam are organized?
We aren't, but we aid each other as best we can. I mainly collect taxes and announce the Commandant's dispositions.
That'd make you a prime target for Yorveth.
You're correct on that account. He's warned me many times, and I've explained the need for my function to him just as many. Both in vain. It seems we've agreed to disagree. Well, the sword is his calling, the pen is mine. Hence, no meeting of the minds.
Flotsam is otherwise boiling with cynicism and racial tension. Having saved our friends Zoltan Shive and Dandelion from the scaffold, we get a general lay of the situation. Everyone is acting how you'd expect in these dark times. Cruel, narrow-minded, selfish.
You gave Vernon a full report on Flotsam. Seen anything unusual around here?
They've got some amazing women at the brothel. You should take a look. One of them.
You know what I mean.
A town like any other. It's got a harbor, an inn, and a stinking muddy river. That's what an ordinary man would say. But we poets also look into people's souls. And things are not good. I saw a robbery sanctioned by law. Town watchmen laughing as they confiscated goods, all the while talking about how they finally bring order to the town. I saw drunken thugs beat up an elf woman while no one even flinched. I know these things happen everywhere, but here, it's not motivated by hatred or misguided attempts at meting out justice. People are driven by cold calculation. They're always looking for opportunities to get a little richer.
We buy a round of drinks with our primary cast. Zoltan drifts from place to place and has accepted that about himself. He feels to be a simple merchant and nothing more. Zoltan is a window into who Geralt might be if he never became a witcher, if he was never handed over to Kaer Morhen as a child and subject to unusual experiments. In keeping with Geralt, our dwarven friend immortalizes everything he sees. The world is a bastard, ripe for critique and analysis. Employing the spirit of radical compassion, Zoltan evens out the moral gravity in any situation he encounters. The troubadour, Dandelion, is a little more layered in this regard. While possessing obvious properties for a delegated comic relief character, and possessing a notable immaturity in his endless phases and poorly executed schemes, Dandelion stands no less principled and compassionate than Zoltan. He is the hyper-extroverted, creative counterweight to Geralt's stoic pragmatism. The terrifying Robespierrean chains of virtue thus bind this cast together. As the conversation rolls onward, we get a lay on the political situation. Triss Merigold is in an uncertain position as Geralt's known lover and Foltest's former advisor. Baron Kimbo and John Natalis barely keep order in Temeria, while the country rages on the brink of civil war. The matter of succession remains unresolved. It is well known that Foltest sired bastards, though it stands within plausible deniability. As his children Anais and Busi cannot be located, however, tension is only beginning to release. Burrito, rogue and bandit, alternative words for local statesman, will see renewed riches, as Flotsam is becoming a critical port for the Pontar Valley, a critical source of wealth and a point of contention for the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard in tandem. As we will later learn, Lorito has been fortifying the military capacities of Flotsam, cementing himself as a man who decides the fate of trade between the northern kingdoms. The Witcher who has nothing but disdain for politics is forced to play in the mud. It seems that the fate of the world mirrors his spiritual life. As the first game illustrated, however, that should not give way to delusions of grandeur. Destiny is a double-edged sword. There may be free choice, but there is also death. Everything is teleologically oriented toward death. And we will get another round of it, for a post-conjunction beast known as the Karen attacks the port and delivers us into the presence of Sela de Tanzerville. Sela is an organizational true believer. Representing the conspiratorial lodge of sorceresses, acting as an avatar, she has given herself entirely to the cause, to create a world free from the irrational urges of mid-wit kings. She is tracking our Kingslayer Letho, but wears the false guise of slaying the Karen and extracting its prized, rare ingredients. We see the spiritual divide between Triss Merigold and Sela in these moments. Triss has some meaningful loyalty to the Lodge of Sorceresses, working in shadow to ostensibly better the world, but doesn't share the psychopathy and power-lustful drive of her sisters. Caught between two worlds, Triss is forever forced to walk the line between cosmopolitan ambition and comfortable love.
Triss, stop thinking with your vagina and get a hold of yourself. The Witcher will manage.
And we may turn our eyes to Vess. A character familiar to our deadly prologue, she has experienced both ends of the boiling conflict. She was once a nomadic prisoner to a one-off Scoia'tael unit. The commando took a liking to her after they massacred her entire village. The Blue Stripes eventually clashed with this unit and freed Vess. Vernon Roach saw potential in her, thus her new life as a special ops guardian of the law began. Although the Blue Stripes are a generally crude and racist crew, Vess has a fairly liberal and egalitarian outlook. There's no real hatred in her blood, no taste for racial tension. This is the only life she knows. Her position in this cultural war was defined not by static time and place, but by dynamic circumstance. Her access to information about the perspective of the Elven freedom fighters and those sworn to fight them is split between inconsumable dramatic events, and the narrative she must tell herself to find stability within the world. The sapient urge to solidify one's place in the world, to quiet the gnawing doubt and existential anxiety inherent to all idleness, encourages one to, at times, underthink political conflict.
I've tried cooking, darning, smiling like a doll, serving beer in a tavern. None of my thing.
This push and pull defines every character in The Witcher 2. Geralt feels the call of a life stolen from him, but must always attend to the latest disaster. The elven terrorist and freedom fighter, Yorveth, participates in this vibe, having some desire to lay down his weapons and rest, but the burning fire of hatred animates him toward a bloody purpose. This finds shape in the most radical application of non-linearity the game provides, the decision between following Vernon Roach to King Henselt's war camp, or Yorveth to assist Saskia the Dragon Slayer in Verdun. One can almost hear the call of Eredin, his portrayal in the first game particularly, telling us that every decision we make will bring forth devastation. Once we deal with the Kayrin, receiving an interesting monologue from Triss Merigold in the process, where the higher rungs of society have a contemporary understanding of evolution but a pre-Newtonian view of physics, this critical choice between Yorveth and Roach will divide the game into two parts. Each is hermetically sealed and reveals unique information. Our perspective on the political situation will differ, mirroring an appropriate character study within their divergent paths. After a botched encounter with Letho, where, upon Yorveth being fed credible information that the Kingslayer plans to betray him, Yorveth feigns his own capture, all character paths converge onto one. Zoltan reveals that his Scoia'tael ties run deeper than he wants to admit. Triss Merigold suggests that they leave the political situation behind and start a new life as fugitives. Yorveth is filled with rage and purpose. Roach is in the dark towards Geralt's plans and clashes with them. This frenzy resolves into a poetic dance between swords, with Letho gaining the upper hand and deciding to repay Geralt a forgotten favor. Blood for blood, a life for a life. Geralt once met the Kingslayer in Nilfgaard, having set off to chase the Wild Hunt. Geralt saved Letho's life when he engaged a particularly dangerous lizard. And for that, Letho now spares his life, vowing to make use of a red-headed sorceress before he leaves Flotsam.
See you in Aedirn, then.
Triss has a heated telecommunications conversation with her fellow conspirator, Philippa Eilhart, interrupted by Letho barging down the door and demanding teleportation to Aedirn. This encounter has an incommunicable vibe to it. Hushed whispers usually uttered in secrecy and shadow, most importantly behind a magical veil, are now within curious sight. Philippa falls into the aforementioned characteristic of likable evil. When a certain level of psychopathy is combined with genuine intelligence and competence, it feels like a virtue in its own right. A character capable of being honest about who they are.
We'll adjust to the new order and make use of this situation.
5 years of my work wasted? The peace of Sintra hangs by a thread, and Temeria will plunge into civil war any day now. There's nothing to use. We need to find those responsible and dispense justice.
Calm down. 2 things should be partaken cold. Sorrel soup and politics. Calculate, and don't let your emotions lead you. We can't resurrect Foltest, so stop playing the Avenger. We'll proceed wisely and deliberately. We'll use the situation, understand?
Understanding that his personal goals and the political theater have collided once more, Geralt must dive into the internal worlds of Roach and Yorveth. It is common for CRPGs to divide faction loyalties upon shared mutual interest, where two opposing parties can help with your ultimate objective but stand mutually exclusive to each other. We can see this in Baldur's Gate 2, where the Shadow Thieves and the Vampires are very much warring guilds, but claim they can help the Ballspawn in their quest for Irenicus. When it comes to The Witcher, this geographical split between a warring army and a fortified fortress defines much of the game. Should we go with Yorveth, the Dwarven Mountains of Upper Edirn await, and should we choose Roach, we must join the Raging Warband. Q Setting 1. Saskia the Dragonslayer is an egalitarian liberal fighting for the end of class division and feudalism. She represents who Yorveth can no longer be, having spent a lifetime as an outlaw and an irritant, buried underneath a century's weight of hatred and death. As is typical in any literary portrayal of the leader archetype, she has the delicate charisma and openness required to rally disparate class and ethnic divisions under one banner. This great man or great woman trope can be seen as suspicious, but it works well for the story setting, defining the experimental transition from monarchy to democracy. In this historical time period, Saskia is best equipped if she can fulfill the de facto role of a monarch without replicating the absolutist system too deeply. Hence she acts as an intermediary for inevitable struggle and debate. Verdun is deeply scarred, but not yet exhausted. In the interim years between The Lady of the Lake and The Witcher 2, Henselt already tried to defile these lands, seeing it as his birthright. It now sings promises of prescient freedom, pre-Republican liberalism impressing itself on history. The streets are charged with love of liberty. Ancient dwarven mountains give the landscape a sense of legitimacy, that Saskia's ideals are rooted in the earth itself. Yorveth seeks to find himself amidst this new hope for rebirth and regeneration. Q Setting 2. Henselt is an illiberal strongman who relies solely on a faint sense of honor and the spark of selective charisma to instill loyalty in his men, while promising nationalistic glory to the political classes. He embodies a distinctly masculine ideal of strength and courage, even genuinely sharing in these virtues himself. Like all kings, he stands hypocritical to his values, upholding them in only choice cases, but this facile attempt at virtue makes for an interesting time camping with him. There is a relevant scene where Henselt will test Geralt with veiled and not so veiled threats upon an impossible demand, responding positively to Geralt holding his ground. This represents the narcissism of power. He's so concerned with not being surrounded by, as he calls it, ass munchers, but he is blind to the ways that his station encourages that behavior. Rulers are 5-year-old children role-playing as imaginary heroes. Fleeting passions of the moment dominate their lives, despite all authoritarian pretense toward 500-year plans or enlightened foresight. The Kedweni camp exists under the cover of darkness, gray skies anticipating the fire and smoke of wartime. Paranoia defines the atmosphere. As was foretold when Sabrina Glevizig was burned at the stake, square coins are passed between active conspirators. Every waking moment is an agitation toward conflict. Roach, if anything, stands to lose himself in the iron chains linking conspiracies and men. These two opposing perspectives track alongside our growing digital divide. Traditionally speaking, the digital divide concerns unequal access to digital technology like desktop computers, smartphones, and the internet, but it arguably reduces to a far more fundamental knowledge divide, which itself is grounded in a cognitive divide influenced by worldly factors. The process involved in creating this video essay, for example, is rested on tacit skills developed through immersion and experience. The personal computer was coded as an appropriate toy for me at an early age, an opportunity not necessarily available to people of differing backgrounds. Factors like internet connection speed, and the relative tech literacy of one's peers and parents curve the possible plane of experience. Even so-called content creators exist in a distinct social stratosphere from those who are passive consumers. The digital divide reduces to informational asymmetry, and The Witcher 2 is bathed in a similar concept, while itself having once existed in the context of its own access divide. It is almost lost history to say that the first two Witcher games, prior to the console release of the second game's Enhanced Edition, were once considered PC elitist titles and had an inscrutable character matching that reputation. They weren't excessively legible at the time, appealing to a sub-mainstream audience, that is, a large audience otherwise filtered through meaningful barriers to entry. When it comes to playing older video games in general, tech literacy, a constitutive factor of the digital divide, heavily defined the experience. From access to piracy, unofficial patches, mods, walkthroughs, and insular subcultures capable of sharing appreciation, The Witcher is best experienced on the elitist end of the digital divide. To conceptually extend the digital divide in this way is to explain it. The phenomena naively implied by present-day academic study of the world is not its full meaning. As such, even a medieval fantasy setting like The Witcher can tacitly employ it. For a society under the chokehold of feudalism and monarchy, access to literacy is its own digital divide. Those who can read and write letters have access to a shared virtual world, delivering tremendous but inegalitarian advantages. Sorcerers and sorceresses similarly have unique access to virtualized information, the magics raging across the Platonic heavens. Even witchers like Geralt participate in their own autocracy of information, benefiting from a shared pool of experience and scarcely read tomes that deliver much practical wisdom about herbal medicine and hunting monsters. The Witcher 2 runs parallel to this concept, where it is only through virtually simulating the game twice, alongside the Roach and Yorveth pathways, that we get access to critical but obscured information.
And you expect me to drop everything and tell Roach, hey, it's been great, but I've got places to go and people to find?
You know, you could. I mean, you don't really owe him anything. I'm just afraid you'll get caught up in something and you won't be able to back out. Yorveth's a sly old elf. He's been fighting humans for a full century at least. This Letho is no common bandit either, and I shudder to think who put him on the warpath. It's a mire, Geralt, deep and hungry, and it could swallow you whole before you know it.
It possibly already has.
Should we follow Vernon Roach to war, the game will drench itself in grimdark tonal colors. The Roach path is simply baptized in mutual fear and paranoia. Even before we reach Henselt's war camp, the infiltration of Warrido's little fortress sets the tone. In one fell swoop, we kill Warrido's mother amidst the squalor of drugs and blood, as well as Warrido himself, and free a repeatedly abused elven captor, only to take her own life after giving birth to an unwanted child. Vess herself is nearly subject to rape and torture, having disguised herself as one of Warrido's horrors before Roach's assault of the hideout. The game immediately communicates to us that we are under the sinister shadow of power. When we arrive in Henselt's camp, our primary characters are already world-weary and stern.
Who the hell are you? What do you want?
The key to the upper quarters. I know you have it.
You want to free the elven girl? Your efforts are in vain. Like in Ithleen's prophecy, the seed has been planted and will soon...
Shut up and give me the key.
The key. The key. Where did I put it?
Thanks, Geralt. I heard something behind that door.
The horseman ran away, but I'm sure he'll show up again.
Bloody non-humans.
Enough of Yorveth. What's with Laredo and where's Vess?
Laredo's dead. I saved Vess. Barely.
What happened?
Your plan was hardly the most...
A boy, Geralt! A healthy boy!
Whose child is that?
Morals.
Whose?
We found an elf woman Laredo kidnapped almost a year ago. He was the father.
I'd never touch a she-elf.
Enough! We don't have time for that. The ship's waiting.
Why did you do it? Why? touch me!
I hate this town.
Turning our eye back to Verdun, Saskia is immediately poisoned, the fact of which sends the nobles into disarray. The city threatens to eat itself from the inside, and Philippa Eilhart takes this opportunity to accelerate her vile schemes. Philippa Eilhart is a vengeful owl, as cruel as she is wise. At your prompting, she can shed light on any given situation. Those cold and calculating eyes have seen much in their time. Sending us out on a quest to find symbolic artifacts that will channel magical power, she sneakily adds a Rose of Remembrance to the shopping list, which will permanently bind Saskia to her will. As it turns out, Saskia is not exactly the virginal dragon slayer at all, but simply a dragon herself, once under the guardianship of 3 jackdaws, a character familiar to the books. We first encountered her likeness in the prologue, when she aided the Lavalets in their bitter war against Foltest. This war to come is delayed by another war, one that is raging eternally. When Henselt parleyed with the Dragon Slayer, his presence activated a blood curse originally placed on him by Sabrina Glevizig. The king invaded these lands just a few years ago, and has not forgotten the defeat. The Lodge of Sorceresses judged that Henselt conquering Edirn would upset the balance of power in the north. As a result, she rained meteors from the sky, killing Kedweni and Edirnian soldiers alike. Although both armies were routed, the guilty party was obvious and, as such, Sabrina was burned at the stake. Her death inspired a local cult following. One of the soldiers who witnessed her death, in fact, he carried out the execution, renounced violence and became her devout follower. Dubbed the Visionary by the locals, this visionary carries with him an exceptional sense of individuality. Making ritualistic candles out of fish oil, the smell keeps harpies away and allows him to live a quiet life as a hermit. He prescribes psychedelics to the willing, encouraging people to find themselves in tranquility and immersion in nature, just as he found himself in war. Might we not find ourselves in this war? A certain oracle named Cedric thought so. Before his untimely death preceding Triss Marigold's capture, Cedric could be found just outside Warrido's outpost, using his intuitive connection with the forest to warn villagers when it is not safe to traverse. He was cursed with the gift of foresight. In exquisite agony, he preferred to drown in a steady stream of alcohol. This finds natural parallels to Jacques de Aldersberg in the first game, but instead of going mad over his prophetic sight, he keeps himself docile, safe in a mist of intoxication. With his dying breath, he foretold of a witcher who would dispel an ancient curse and, in so doing, recover his memory. There's something definite about the fog, which retains the memories and regrets of soldiers long dead that can otherwise treat amnesia. As Geralt correctly suspects, there is a growing link between the shards of his past and the existing political crisis. Letho's motives are painted black only for reasons of lost memory. The mist is as otherworldly as it is deadly, a hymn that oscillates between life and death. We relive the battle led by Selkirk on the Edirnian side and Vandegrift on the Kedweni front. Every breath is electrifying and tense. The world itself dilutes into a dreamlike haze. The restless dead rage their final days on and on, but in such magical environments, a far more elemental hatred can emerge, creating a Draugr. This living monument to hatred stabilizes the curse, threatening to consume the land and exponentially expand. Whatever may be our many wounds in our mortal days, the afterlife is a cruelty beyond articulation. Coming face to face with this avatar of contempt, Geralt thus dissipates the mess, but not before reliving the lives of Selkirk and others, seeing firsthand, for example, how Sabrina Glevizig condemned herself to death.
I've finished talking to you, witch. Time to win this battle. My lords, to your banners! We enter the fray!
Maybe you finished with me, but that doesn't mean I finished with you. Nadovesaveg.
How can we help you, Sabrina?
My place at Hensel's court is threatened. Furthermore, if Vandergrift wins the battle, nothing will stop Hensel from taking Upper Edirne.
The balance of power in the north will be upset. What do you intend?
I shall summon Melgar's fire to the battlefield. It will kill Vandergrift and weaken both sides.
Any use of unconventional weapons may be severely censored.
I'm aware of that.
Hensel's hegemony is counter to the Lodge's plans. We will help you, but remember, in the event that you fail, you'll be on your own.
I am ready.
Stop firing! Our men are dying! A massacre! Save us, sire!
Sabrina, is that your work?
Order your troops forward, Your Majesty. The Adirnian army is routed.
Not only the Adirnian, look at that terrified horde. This very morning they were the finest of my knights.
They'll make it if they're reinforced.
Who allowed you to use magic?
Sire, if you strike now, Lawmark will be yours.
You've tainted my honor, brought death to dozens of knights.
Sire, the battle was lost.
You put me to shame before Demavend. His troops fought like men of honor should, to the end. Sabrina Glevisig, I sentence you to death. You shall burn at the stake. I will return to claim my birthright.
This is a taste of the virtualization that magical power delivers. Standing comparable to the internet today, these abstract yet personal structures of information hold the key to everything. It is as if Geralt is allowed to bridge the medieval-digital divide, if only for a moment, which is quite typical for his character, always straying 1 or 2 steps away from a Witcher's station. War is a hunger, and there are some spirits who will never be satisfied. Trailing King Hensel's every step alongside Sabrina is the cartoonishly queer-coded death mode. He finds the battlefield to be homelike, wondering at the mystery and power contained within destruction, rather than dwelling on the waste and horror. He makes for an obvious moral counterbalance to figures like Sela de Tanzaville. For all the evil done by the Lodge, they are at least pragmatic, they at least believe in something like good governance, distant as they are from mere psychopathy. Henselt finds himself caught in the middle of these dispositions. It is clear that the weight of Kedweni culture carries his words, for it is only quote-unquote honorable and manly to take land by conquest. He's taken by bouts of sadism, yes, but it is quite clear that a misplaced sense of loyalty to his home culture dominates his will and judgment. Should Geralt be venturing under the Roach Path, all these warmongers will owe him double time, though witches are not known to have their depths respected. The curse has to be lifted from Henselt himself, not just the mist. Sabrina Glevisig devised the complicated blood curse, and it will not rest for the fact of simple gimmicks. Adding a second dimension to this curse expands the otherwise short and concise time with Vernon Roach's story quite considerably, as there is simply less content in the game if you do not adventure with Yorvith. Turning our sights back to Verdun, the rich architecture matches the excitement of our liberation front. Even cynical Zoltan Shive gets swept up in the revolutionary atmosphere, as if the environment itself is yelling liberty, equality, fraternity. Yorvith has experienced a mild rebirth in this regard, which activates deep skepticism from Geralt. The evaluative Witcher tries to peer into the elf's soul, finding it unbelievable that this change in temperament should be so severe and so sudden. But Saskia is Yorvith's dying hope for his soul. It is a projected substitution of roles, the recognition that Saskia champions the possibility of real change in the world, while the Scoia'tael are locked in a losing war. Here we discover a delicate tension laying within competing models of the sage, as delineated by the ancient Taoist Zhuangzi and Nietzsche's fictional Zarathustra. Zhuangzi posits a hyper-adaptable sage that is internally robust but externally flexible, engaged in a mode of genuine pretending, where compromising for the social world need not compromise your mental life. The Zhuangzist sage can survive in any environment, opting to play limbo with the 10,000 cultural norms. The Zarathustrian sage, on the other hand, certainly finds strong overlaps with Zhuangzist philosophy, but champions a definite existential anger. The Zarathustrian model worships a certain kind of stubbornness and defiance, whereas the Zhuangzist recommendation is far more oriented toward achieving peace and oneness with a shared environment. Zarathustra would tell us to swim against the tide, Zhuangzi to joyously play in the stream. This is despite their shared agreement that the present affairs of men are deeply flawed and worth overcoming. Does Saskia the Dragon Slayer not fit Zhuangzi's hyper-adaptive sage? Bending under the weight of systemic pressure, yet never compromising the soul within. She finds natural moral companionship with people like Geralt and Yorveth, but those latter two boil at a point of constant tension, a responsiveness to misery that disrupts the mental peace from which Saskia takes up her role. Immersing herself into the perspective of the nobility, the peasantry, and the racial tensions hidden within those class dimensions, she must first become one with the social fabric in order to overcome it. It could be said that the Zhuangzist sage walks a fine line between reformist and revolutionary, while the Zarathustrian agent is an agitator that conforms only to its own taste, symbolic rebellion without a definite political goal in mind. Geralt and Yorveth ultimately walk the same road, finding their selfhood clarified when inverted by someone ideologically similar to them.
Roach could be on the other side of the fog.
In that case, I'll finally get him. I came close in Flotsam.
Are units like the Blue Stripes common?
The Blue Stripes are uncommon, let me assure you. Efficient, ruthless, and well-led, they're your version of the Scoia'tael. But you're right, there are other units. Each kingdom has a few of them, smaller or larger. They were a reaction to our operations behind the lines during the wars with Nilfgaard. These units recruit only those who have nothing left to lose. They're persuaded it's all for a greater good and are spoon-fed dreams of revenge for the death of their loved ones. They gradually lose any vestige of humanity, kill when ordered to without hesitation. Of course, the same happens to regular soldiers, only these special units actually enjoy hunting elves.
You're a lot alike, your Scoia'tael and them. You've turned into the same killing machines.
Said a witcher.
Precisely why I know what I'm talking about. I've been stripped of the capacity to experience pleasure from killing. When they made me, someone knew what they were doing.
I doubt anyone knows these days. But thank you for your harsh words. They say the truth heals.
Many a poison can cure, provided the dose is small enough.
If one is following the Yorveth path, then Saskia will win the Battle of Verdun, creating a truly free and egalitarian state. Should we have sided with Roach, however, the city will fall, Henselt will break through, and the rebels will believe Saskia to be dead. No matter the case, Philippa Eilhart takes control of Saskia's will and teleports to Loch Muin. If we are on the Roach path, then Henselt will not be far behind us, as multiple plots from that mist of paranoia converge into one. Verdun Roach's quest for the Kingslayer, Letho, came conjoined with a far different purpose, to spy on Henselt and undermine the Kaedweni war effort. This conspiracy was set in motion long before Foltest's death. Their chief aim was to prevent an alliance between Nilfgaard and Kaedwen, while generally sowing chaos and limiting Henselt's influence. As Geralt rightfully tells Roach earlier in the game, undisguised Temerian support for Henselt makes no sense. With control of Aedirn, Henselt would have scarce motivation to respect Temerian independence. When Deathmode and King Henselt learned of this, they had the entire Blue Stripes unit killed, raping Vess in the process, leaving her, alongside an absent Roach, the sole survivors. And now the victorious monarch has trapped himself in a room with a mutated Witcher and an angry firebrand.
You can certainly fence. It seems I've met my match. You've won the battle, but lost the war. The city's in my hands.
And you're in mine.
For the good of the Temerian crown, Vernon Roach is prepared to do anything. If needed, he becomes a murderer and requires others to do the same. Bernard Laredo had only disdain for the world, gave it nothing but suffering. I helped Roach, joined him and his people, and I had to face another choice. Killing the commander of a forgotten trading post is not the same as killing a king. Even if both are murderers and rapists.
Vernon Roach, Temerian cockerel of the Blue Stripes, what will you do with me?
You know perfectly well.
You won't kill me. You wouldn't dare. I'm the King of Kedwin and soon of Lawmark. The North won't survive without me. I've won. Do you know why I rushed into battle? Do you? I had to resolve it before Loch Muin.
He's playing for time. Let's kill him.
Wait. Tell us, King. What's going to happen in Loch Muin?
A new world order, new borders. Everything will change. All the kings and princes of the North will be there. Do you know the old saying? He who controls the Pontar Valley controls the North.
Have the mages been invited?
It's their idea. They want to revive the Council and Conclave. They want to regain their rights and privileges, their place in society. What tripe? I've outsmarted them all. I'll be the one to dictate treaties. I'll show them who's ruler.
You had my men killed.
Of course I had them killed. What do you do with spies in Temeria? Give them awards?
None of those hanged were part of the plot. Only me.
You know the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Your villainy knows no bounds.
What do you call villainy? The fact that I've made Kedwen stronger than ever? You fool! I'm the last ruler of the North whom Nilfgaard must respect, and it will. Witcher, reason with him.
Are murder and rape royal virtues of the New Order too?
Every wench dreams of being ploughed by a king.
And Vess?
Did she complain to you? I thought she liked it. She squeaked like an unoiled hinge.
I'm leaving you two alone.
Squeaky hinge. Funny. Very funny.
You wouldn't dare.
Enough of this plowing chatter. Someone needs to die, and I'll sleep better for it.
I am Henselt of Ardcarreg, the last of the unicorns. I won't beg for mercy.
Look me in the eyes.
Go on! Take your revenge!
A flea has bitten a lion.
Henselt. Only we know what happened here. Well, and Henselt. The sooner we forget it, the better.
I'll erase it from my memory.
Sheila teleported herself to Loch Muin.
Where there's Sheila, there's Letho. The murderers are gathering for their peace talks.
We have to be there.
Should Geralt let Roach take his revenge on the rapist and murderer, Geralt will later flashback to this moment with the philosophical prose of an anarchist. Employing the Rothbardian move of flipping Augustine on his head, rulership is identified as in tension with the moral law. Not law as in institutional convention, but moral facts themselves. Beholding this law as irreducible to anything else, no mere convention can magically transform rape into a virtue, or kings into a guardian institution.
There is one crime that all civilizations consider irredeemable and unforgivable: regicide. Transgression of laws both human and divine, a blow to the vital organs of society. That is why those in power create bloody havoc and wallow in it. They are never punished. Not subject to moral judgments, they stand above the law. Henselt's blood now stains Roach's hands and mine. I could have stopped him, but I didn't want to. Now Henselt is a cold corpse, and the blue stripes in the world beyond are laughing.
Augustine once said that without the divine right of kings, the kingdom is nothing but an organization of bandits, and here we agree wholeheartedly. Rejecting Henselt's pragmatic arguments that a strong ruler is needed at the upcoming summit at Loch Mulleen, we cast ourselves into exile. It is only too ironic that this quest, which started out as a need to clear our names upon Foltest's murder, should resolve itself into kingslaying. It is not just kings who are destined to die. Loch Mulleen is a delicate slice of paradise lost, the nationalistic admiration of ruins that hold a promise of the past. The mages invited all titled rulers to this summit. They want to regain their rights and privileges otherwise lost to them. And so we traverse through the wilderness of political mirrors. The Roach and Yorveth paths will mirror yet contradict each other in appropriate ways. When adventuring with Roach, the political situation weighs itself at our feet, to make up for the epistemic distortion in Act 3, where Saskia's true nature remains hidden on the Roach path. We can unravel a plot involving Anais and Bussy, finding that Baron Kimball and Count Marivel each tried to murder the children, in a way subverting the other's schemes. It seems that John Natalis, Roach, and the absent Toller are the only true Temerian patriots. Anais is revealed to have been imprisoned by Deathmold and the Black Ones, the Nilfgaardians wanting the Temerian position at the summit weakened. When adventuring with Yorveth, Loch Mulleen is hostile territory, requiring Geralt to sneak his way through the armies occupying the ancient city. Temeria, Redania, Nilfgaard, Kedwin all have their say, and will cut us down if we leave the shadows. Shillard Fitz-Osterland can be seen stalking the streets, never straying far from the Nilfgaardian encampment. It is revealed that Triss Marigold has been subject to artifact compression, an artifact that Geralt may be wearing for most of the game, should he have followed Yorveth to Verdun. Nilfgaard already knows about the Lodge of Sorceresses and their schemes. The interrogation done to Triss Marigold is superfluous, a political show, the parallel construction of a narrative so that Nilfgaard need not reveal their bankrolling of Letho. And when it comes to Letho, we behold the tragic nature of state power. Letho is a brilliant man, intelligent, resourceful, a true individual in every sense. Many great leaders and figures throughout history have debased themselves through their allegiance to political power. As Nietzsche observed in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "State? What is that? Well then open your ears to me, for now I shall speak to you about the death of peoples." The state tells lies in all the tongues of good and evil, and whatever it says, it lies. Confusion of tongues of good and evil. This sign I give to you as the sign of the state. Verily, this sign signifies the will to death. Alas, to you too, you great souls, it whispers its dark lies. At last, it detects the rich hearts which like to squander themselves. It will give you everything if you adore it, this new idol. It would use you as bait for the all too many. Indeed, a hellish artifice was invented there, a horse of death, clattering in the finery of divine heroes. State I call where all drink poison, the good and the wicked. State where all lose themselves, the good and the wicked. State where the slow suicide of all is called life. Behold the superfluous. They gather riches and become poorer with them. They want power, and first the levers of power, much money, the impotent paupers. Watch them clamor, these swift monkeys. They clamor over one another, and thus drag one another into the mud and the depth. They all want to get to the throne, as if happiness sat on the throne. Often mud sits on the throne, and often also the throne on mud. Mad they all appear to me, clamoring monkeys and over-ardent. My brothers, do you want to suffocate in the fumes of their snouts and appetites? Rather break the windows and leap to freedom. Only where the state ends, there begins the human being who is not superfluous. Overbearing forces of collective power, which speaks in tones of misanthropy and textured deceit, can draw out choice individuals and distort their destiny. Fascistic leaders like Mussolini, for example, were educated and charismatic men who sacrificed everything for political gain, and instead ended up in the grave as an embarrassing stain on history. Although Letho does not seek political power, he is still a willing pawn. He shall play an integral part in the political summit. Should we tread the Roach path, the chief political concern will be recovering Anais and presenting her to John Natalis, so that Temeria may lay rest concerns of its political division and speak with one voice. The child can be handed to Radovid, of course, that cunning and calculating spirit, the spark of malice glistening in his eyes as the true spiritual heir of Philippa Eilhart. And Philippa too will know of this, for if we ventured with Yorvith, a comparable option to free Saskia from Eilhart's grasp will be offered as an alternative to saving Triss from the Nilfgaardians. Radovid will sadistically gouge out her eyes as repayment for her years of rulership and social abuse. As I noted in my previous video on The Witcher 1, a vocal segment of the community believes that Radovid was rational and sane until the third game. Here we see a dearth of evidence for that view. He is not playing 9-dimensional chess, at least not always. He is venting his twisted hatred onto the world, toward Philippa and all sorceresses. Still, there is much to be said of his intelligence. Should we have killed King Henselt, for example, he pattern matches Geralt and Roach as the most likely suspects. No attempt to lie in this situation can persuade him. Those representing northern interests believe that Loch Moline will herald a new world order, a fundamental renegotiation of borders, treaties, and institutions. This is accidentally correct. Nilfgaard is using the summit as an excuse to sow distrust and division within the northern kingdoms, softening its defenses up for their invasion. As we learn from Letho, and as sorceresses like Sela predicted, the Black Ones have already crossed the Yaruga River. The fires of war shall consume the land. Loch Moline is boiling with dangerous tension, but how this friction bursts depends on two sets of choices, between the Roach and Yorvith path, and whether Geralt rushes to save Triss from the Nilfgaardians or helps Roach and Yorvith in their respective political goals. We find that Roach and Yorvith become almost minor characters in their own story if we save Triss in a campy feat of heroism, while at the same time it is clear that placing politics over friendship is not in character for Geralt.
You're not easy to find.
Look what they did to me. Radovid. To think I taught him magic tricks when he was just a boy. Free me, Geralt. I have to get out of here. Do you hear me? Help me!
You'll answer a few questions first. Where's Saskia?
When I was arrested, she was with Sheila. They must be on their way to the deliberations by now.
How does the spell work?
Saskia's will and mine are one. She cannot resist me. But fear not. There's no suffering involved. She merely believes me to be the most wonderful person in the world. As if she were in love. You know what's most beautiful? In spite of all this, she seems unchanged. She's retained her charm, her valor, her honor.
I didn't track you alone. Yorvith can't wait to see you again.
My death would change little. Yorvith and all like him have no right to judge others.
Was Shillard telling the truth about the lodge, the assassinations?
He said exactly what Radovid wanted to hear. Half-truths, musings stripped of context, which differ very little from lies.
Did Triss take part in all this?
She's clean in those terms. Innocent as a child, but only to a point. I assure you, she has not been honest with you about many other matters.
Why did all this happen? Murdering monarchs, what interests did it serve? I can't fathom.
Help me get out of here and I'll explain all and lift the spell from Saskia. Take these shackles off me and lead me to my house. I beg you. I'll tell you everything. Everything.
Clock's ticking. Time is of the essence.
Why do you do this? Would you take vengeance on a blind woman?
Shillard said they've got Triss. I have to free her before they put out her eyes, too.
Going to the Nilfgaardian camp is suicide.
And leaving a friend is villainy.
All the same, Yorvith is generally on the path to finding himself, as mentioned.
You're the most noble human I know, Gwynblade.
I'm no human.
I'm glad you reminded me. My hatred for the species abated for a moment.
And Roach can at best stall the loss of everything he loves.
Did you see Radovid's retinue? I swear the snot-nosed lad thinks he's king of the world. He should never have shown up here after the recent events in Redania. Honestly, if he grows to be another Vizimir, I hope he ends up like the first. And those robes of his, did you see? All right, there's time for one more. Pants off. You've broken my arm! You've broken my arm! Do you know it's worth, you son of a bitch?
Now it's worth shit like the rest of you.
What do you want? I'll give you anything.
You can't give back what you took from me. Cutting off your balls and slitting your throat will have to do.
No!
You reap what you sow.
Roach is a man who started as a vagrant and rose to new heights, now destined to burn too close to the Crimson Sun. Yorvith has known nothing but pain, but is granted an opportunity to redeem his life diachronic. Siding with Yorvith, Saskia, and Vergen presents overtones of hope in this otherwise dark tale. Venturing with Roach, Hensel, and the Kedweni army drags us through the mud. These frenzied interests collide in the summit, presenting a fairly dynamic scene tracking alternative possible worlds. A few things remain constant. Sela de Tanzerville will be backed into a corner, commanding Saskia to burn down the city. If Triss is not present, Shilard Fitz-Osterlin will present Letho as if he were a captured assailant, framing the sorceresses and confessing to his king-slaying mission, while Shilard will provide a list of names implicating every sorceress in the conspiratorial lodge. Consequently, the murder of kings. When Triss is present, however, she personally accuses Sela de Tanzerville of assassinating Demavend. Interestingly too, of Foltest, although she happens to be wrong on this account. Sela lost control of Letho soon after Demavend was killed. Foltest was not slated to die by her hand. Letho began his mission with the intent to frame Sela for the murder of Demavend, but due to a stroke of brilliant luck, all he had to do was carry out her orders.
I also prepared to assassinate the King of Kavir. Esterad Tyson was to be the first victim of the mysterious assassins. But before I could do the dirty deed, Sheila asked me to slay Demavend. The gods had smiled upon me. I couldn't believe my luck. Here I've been trying to figure out how to frame Sheila, and now all I needed was to carry out her orders and follow through.
No matter the case, every outcome in this summit plays right into the hands of Nilfgaard. Letho is a man of honor. Should Geralt neglect to rush suicidally into the Black One's encampment, he will save Triss in the ensuing chaos and witch hunt agitated by Radovid. The curious Witcher will be waiting for Geralt in the heart of the city, the ground laden with chess imagery, the Viper School avatar surrounded by blood. What ensues is arguably the greatest conversation to ever be presented in an RPG. The final encounter between Letho and Geralt is about 20 minutes long. No campy threats, no violence, lest you choose it at the end, just an honest heart-to-heart between rivals who don't see each other as enemies. As Letho states, he cherishes the moment when authenticity can reveal itself, when all players must lay their cards down on the table. Courteously asking Geralt if he wants a swig of vodka, we get a volley of satisfying explanations for this impossible quest.
So, ready to lay your cards out on the table?
No matter the game, there comes a point when all the players need to show their cards. I love that moment. But first, vodka.
I suppose my throat's a little dry.
In that case, let's drink to old friendships.
Emir von Emrys, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, who, in a roundabout way, owes his rise to power to a younger Geralt's actions in the Question of Price, personally assigned this mission. He promised to help Letho rebuild the Witcher School of the Viper, so that Witchers need not be barely tolerated exiles in their home country. As he states, the Nilfgaardians could have never imagined more fertile soil. Powerful organizations were already conspiring against each other, planning the assassination of kings. All he need do was stoke the fire, integrate himself, and carry out northern political will. As the conversation builds in strength and intensity, Geralt has his final flashback, the last piece of his memory fit into place. The School of the Viper knows much about the Wild Hunt. Letho even suspects that their school may have been invented to solve the mystery of their appearance. Having tracked down the spectral riders to the Hanged Man's Tree, Geralt felt the call of nobility.
The winter solstice 1270. Midinvern, the night of magic. Letho wasn't lying, the hunt had stopped. At the Hanged Man's Tree, the spectral riders selected from among those they had taken. Yennefer was among them. A wraith cannot be killed, only driven away. Every Witcher knows that. Yet the riders fell beneath the blows of our Witcher's blades. Crimson blood flowed from under their dead men's armor. We could not kill them all. They were simply too many. A stalemate. He was different from all other elves. There was no shame in his gaze. He had never suffered persecution. He had endured no massacres. Humans had not taken his land. This elf was not of this world. He was an invader. We struck a deal. My soul for that of Yennefer. He agreed without hesitation.
The Wild Hunt is looking for Ciri, and we're glad to exchange Yennefer for Geralt in their mad quest. The first game constantly alludes to a dark paranoia in this history. Geralt spent 5 years as a spectral rider for the hunt. What exactly did that entail? The third game would not answer this question, nor does it seem interested in carrying themes over from this title. This insult is even more cruel when we consider the Sword of Destiny trailer precipitating The Witcher 3's release, where Eredin is voicing his lines from the first game, carrying the constant implication that Geralt's newfound role as an agent of chaos would be explored.
White Wolf, at last. I come for her of the prophecy. Every decision you make will bring devastation. Each choice will lead to a greater evil.
That didn't happen, but a trilogy is not just a trilogy. The first two games can be hermetically sealed within themselves, gaining value in their eternal relationships. A third entry abandoning these themes does not make them insignificant. We are presented with a decision to kill or spare Letho, but the objectively correct choice is obvious. All harm done unto Geralt is accidental, and as brilliant as Letho is, he is being manipulated like a fool. The domain of power casts a long shadow, enough to blind us, to move us from our Zarathustrian caves of rebirth to a Platonic cave of muddied ignorance. It creates semiotic stressors between all beings. This interpersonal forcefulness of power corrupts the atmosphere, as all residents of totalitarian dictatorships know. And so Nilfgaard will never respect their promise to Letho. They will try to kill him, as the third game confirms. Of course, they already feasted on his soul, and they were sick enough that the hot bile was nourishing them. It is best to let it be, to internalize the Taoistic lesson imprinted on history, the flow of time that weighs on our nervous systems, whispering with a soothing voice that suffering, hatred, and death are optional. We can transcend ourselves. And what is stopping us? Nothing. Just the incessant noise of our habits, or our stupidities. As Zhuangzi states, the sage rolls the 10,000 things into one. He does not need to effect change in order to experience eternal rebirth. Heaven and earth were born at the same time that I was, and the 10,000 things are one with me. We can find a similar recommendation in Nietzsche, who tells us that the self-overcoming of justice revolves itself into mercy, that it belongs to the most powerful of men to create their own beyond the law. And that is how we conduits of creative nothingness can hide in plain sight, while simultaneously stoking the fires of revolution, to become mentally resistant to the psychological ingredients of authoritarianism, such as petty revenge, churning our soul into something greater. As human beings of becoming, we can always aspire to a higher ideal, that which transcends the divine but is immatized within humanity. Rational agency is our manifest weapon against these shadow plays. Well then, let us make use of them. Not even 1001 senses of the digital divide should stop us. Is the pathos of distance, as pointed out by Nietzsche, really so bad? To find spiritual distinctions between people, higher and lower forms of knowledge, distorted and purified information? After all, it is through contradicting and inconsumable perspectives that we see the whole. A perspective from which to pick perspectives. Kantians would love us for entertaining such an idea. Yet we should not do it in the name of a misguided response to 19th century empiricism and skepticism. We should affirm all that we are. As Nietzsche, speaking through Zarathustra, teaches us, when we introspect ourselves in the right way, when we become conscious of our own power, our morality, our ideals, our souls will shiver with godlike desires. Well then, if the Black Ones cross the Yaruga River and bring the threat of famine and death, should we not commune with the skulls that execute our fate? Is not even death but a morsel of truth, a piece of clothing to stylize ourselves as bearers of a transcendental ideal? Geralt himself walks a crooked path, with webbed toes unfit for the straight and narrow. Is all his difficulties and obstacles a hindrance to his life? No, it is the substance of them. And that is how we may discourse with the Witcher. Death stalks Geralt, yes, and all his decisions and campaigns accelerate disaster. All our activities traversing along the Pontar Valley cleared his name, but the pillage and rape will begin all the same. As particles of chaos, we contra Eredin need not accept bloodletting, need not paint our souls red with this dark substance. We can simply walk away. The ones who make this choice will surely know where they are going. More than anyone with a map, certainly anyone with an overbearing goal, or some suffocating political duty. Like the ones who walk away from Alma laws, we can pursue clean and crisp weather. The raging storms of our emotional disequilibrium may become acts of creative destruction. The world may be bathed in blood, but we have theurgic material with which to clean ourselves. Eric Steinhardt notes that intellectual and artistic activities can be their own atheoreligious ritual, borrowing practices from ancient Platonism and ancient Stoicism. When we concentrate on moral and civic matters, we bear witness to the true, good, and the beautiful. We have thus completed our atheopagan meditation, mediated as we all are as proprietors in the digital divide. And under the theme of reverence for the world, I would like to thank everyone who has made this video and all future endeavors possible. People such as Sarah Neste, Eppingir, Gustav Schiel, Effie Brew, Palomar, Fall from Space, Thanatos, Rania Hale, Joachim, and No Name. And those who explicitly remain anonymous, and everyone else who has helped me throughout the years. When we contemplate the stillness of motion, a flickering silhouette, textured eternity clouds our sight. Indeed, there is nothing but activity. Ethics as activity. Did Aristotle say that? Yet one should not turn to his poetics. Such intolerant taste would corrupt life. And who else could debase the source of vitality? The blighted ones trapped in a cyclical cosmos. For it is said that they breached the golden city, Nietzschean sinners hungry for knowledge, who dared venture to the throne of the gods and beheld it empty, begged that the free-spirited succeed, lest grayscales fall over our sight, a crystalline dragon age, to silence the agonized screams of life.
Well, well. What have we here? Are you a vulture, I wonder? A scavenger, poking amidst a corpse whose bones were long since cleaned? Or merely an intruder, come into these darkspawn-filled wilds of mine in search of easy prey?